All right. Hi, everyone. It's your girl, Dynasty.
And I'm Charles, and welcome to Mental Health in the Hood.
And this is the Mental Health Show.
Good
All
job.
right. Okay, so this is season 2. It's all about psychological and emotional trauma. This is episode 3 of season 2. The topic is life after lockup, transition from prison to the community. So today we have a special guest. All right, so we're going to clap it up.
Wallace.
This is Wallace. So it's a pleasure having you today with us, Wallace.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so we here early in the morning, trying to make sure we get this interview out the way,
Yes,
right? So,
yes.
Dad, tell us a little bit about Wallace, how you guys met, and a little introduction.
Yes, so Wallace, once he got out of prison, he made the transition to our program, which is Timelist. And we help people who get out of prison, give them resources, give them jobs and things like that. So Wallace was like an excellent addition to our team. You know, ever since he came, he dove right in and into our workshops and things like that. So he eventually ended up getting hired for us as a security. And so once he got hired as security, he eventually elevated, and now he works at security at one of our mental health housing. And so he's doing an outstanding job. He's a good friend of mine, and he's here to share a story today. He has a story for y'all that's very impactful.
Yes.
And we just wanted him to come on Mental Health in the Hood
Yes.
and express himself and give y'all a good show today.
All right. So we can't forget shout outs and celebrations, right?
You can't forget that.
Shout outs and celebrations. So shout out to Maka and Ali.
Yes.
They were part of episode 1 and 2 for season 2.
Yes.
The last person on the show was Ali, so we want to thank him for coming to tell his story about living authentically as a Latino American LGBT individual, and his story was very empowering, and we appreciate you coming on the show. So thank you, Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Ali. We appreciate it.
Then we want to shout out the people who attended our Zoom meetup for, what was it, traumatic grief?
Traumatic grief.
All right.
Man, it was wonderful. I'm saying people, they put their emotions out there. It was a great topic. You know, even me and Dynasty, you know, we had a lot to talk about. You know, people was choking up and just got to expand on the topic. You know, just expand on what traumatic grief looks like every day after a tragedy.
Yeah.
And so it was a beautiful thing.
And then I think the main thing that I liked about this discussion is that a lot of people were able to talk about the different types of traumatic grief,
Yes.
which you have brought out a lot, because I think people think about grief as death.
Right.
And there can be grief coming from a relationship,
Yeah.
a divorce, if you lose an animal or a pet,
or even losing a job.
Losing a job,
Yeah.
right? Something
Yeah.
you've been on for a long time.
Exactly.
And I think, too, a lot of people also explained about the fact that the traumatic grief is a process. So there is no, like, you know, sometimes you feeling good, and then sometimes you can go back to it. And I like the fact that people were giving each other recovery tips on how to deal with traumatic grief. It was a very strong topic, but it was a lot of engagement.
Exactly.
So shout out to you guys who came through. That
Thank
was
you.
amazing. Thank you
Yes,
guys.
it was amazing.
So I guess we can now move into this episode. But before we do that, I always like to make sure that I give you guys some education about psychological and emotional trauma. So psychological and emotional trauma is damage or injury to the psyche after living through an extremely frightening or distressing event. It may result in challenges in functioning or generally coping after the fact. While each person who experiences a traumatic event will react differently, many recover well with the proper support system and do not experience long-term problems. Okay, so now that we have our education and we know what psychological and emotional trauma is about, we can jump into the meat and potatoes of this interview.
Yes. Mr. Wallace, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good.
You all right?
Blessed to be here.
How your week been?
Pretty good.
It's been good?
It's been hot.
All right, we have it has been hot. You're right about that. We have a few questions that we're going to be asking you today.
Okay.
All we ask you for is to relax, be honest, be open, and know that we are here for your support. All right? So one of my first questions is, what is your current mental illness, and how did it impact your emotional trauma?
Well, current mental illness is clinical depression with anxiety disorder, and the emotional aspect of it is you feel worthless, you're depressed, the depression goes into despair. So, you have a very low self-esteem.
Wow. Yeah, I can. That is really something. That low self-esteem. I actually experienced that when I was coming up. How did you kind of deal with that when you felt your low emotional
those
esteem,
symptoms of
them
just
symptoms?
of feeling down.
Uh, Dealing with it, it took me, years of actually going through therapy and medication to get the tools needed to be able to deal with it now. When I was younger, I didn't deal with it.
Okay.
It was a lot of anger, resentment. I was self-medicating either through drinking or getting high.
Right. Okay. That's very interesting.
All right. So now that we talked about what was your mental illness and how did it emotionally affect you, psychologically, what age did you start to feel yourself being affected by your emotional trauma? When you actually found out what it was and was able to move forward?
The emotional trauma started at age 11 from physical abuse and sexual abuse.
Okay.
I didn't actually seek help until many, many years later because I was ashamed, didn't want to, So the psychological aspect of it is, I went into despair, suicidal ideation, and then a few suicide attempts because of it.
Wow.
Wow.
And did anybody, so 11 years old when this was happening, just to touch base on the physical abuse, did anybody else witness what you were experiencing, like your parents or?
My parents were in another state at the time. I was staying with an older cousin.
Okay.
I was staying with him and his mom.
Okay. So you were staying within the family, but from another family member. And okay, go ahead.
My folks were still down in Pascagoula, down in Mississippi.
Okay.
And I was out here in San Jose with my cousin.
Okay.
And was there a time where you ever tried to let them know what was going on?
Yeah.
And what was their reaction?
You're acting up. This is a good Christian family. He would never do anything like that.
Okay.
And
And at that time, you was going to church and everything like that.
with this individual, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So how did that make you feel when your mom and dad responded like that?
Anger, hate.
Anger, hate.
I rejected him.
Okay. And what did that anger and hate started to look like for you as a child? Like as far as how did you?
Yeah. What was your outlet?
Getting in fights, especially at school. A lot of alcohol and drug abuse. And I started hanging out with individuals that had the same mindset.
Right.
Yeah, they were always getting in fights too, anger, f everything, world kind of mentality.
Okay.
Not going to school. I'd go months without ever going to school.
Did your teachers ever respond in terms of like contacting your family if they seen some of these behaviors or noticing that you were not attending school?
They contacted my cousins.
Oh, the ones you were staying with. So then that only added more fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
Right.
And since you guys were coming from the religion aspect, the person that you were being physically and sexually abused by was obviously someone you knew.
Yeah, he was my cousin, my older cousin. I was 11, he was 18 years old.
Wow. Yeah, that is something. So I know it was a time. So one of my questions that I want to ask you is, how long did it take you to reach out for help, and what did it look like through that process?
It wasn't until years after being in prison that
Okay.
I finally started to open up more with, like with a counselor, and then they connected me with the psych. We got to talk. On a main line, you're not supposed to be on psych medication.
Okay.
That's to them, at least here in California, mainly it's a no-no. And I knew that once, if they put me on medication, I would have to leave the main line.
Wow. Yeah, that's a
So it was a stigma for being seen and being known as somebody that was struggling with mental health issues.
Yeah, because they figure that they can't trust you. You're not solid. You're not, There's a certain way that they try to look at each other. And if they, know that you're dealing with severe clinical depression and that you've had, suicidal ideation earlier in your life, they see you as weak now.
Okay.
And that is true though. Like, prison is so much a trip how people try to label you. And a lot of times that in prison they don't like to see no weakness in you. So they figure if a person up under medication that's a weakness. Like he can be convinced to do anything as far as against what they have going on in prison. And so, but what they don't understand is that if this person needs medication and he's not on medication, he's just as weak as you think he is. You know what I'm saying? But see, they don't understand that because they have all these stigmas in prison, and you just have to be this tough guy and tough it out and things like that. So that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure. So that's pretty tough.
And when you guys talked about like the identification piece of it, I'm thinking in terms of the colors, when you were dealing with mental health issues, did they make you wear like a different uniform?
No.
Because I noticed that in certain places when I would go visit, that the ones who were in the psych had the different color jumpsuits on. It was yellow.
That was probably in the county jail.
Oh, okay, okay. So when you move up, it's everybody has the same uniform on, attire on. Okay, okay.
Usually it's either blues or a orange jumpsuit.
And then in terms of your when you went to prison, when you talked about seeking help, how old were you when you started to seek help and get that support?
Between 29 and 32.
So you're telling me from 11 years old to all the way to 29. 29 was when you finally was able to get support for what you were actually struggling with.
That's when I actually started taking medication.
Okay.
So everything before was just based off your own healthy or unhealthy coping skills.
Yeah.
Okay. And
like a lot of guys that aren't on medication, they use alcohol, drugs as a self-medicating. It's
so when you start taking medication, did you feel like it helped you?
At first, no.
Okay.
They put me through a whole different regimen. They tried this, different doses. They tried this, different doses.
Yeah.
They put you on lithium, Depakote. It wasn't until probably around 33, 34 that I got the right combination of medications that I actually started to see light at the end of the tunnel. Because before that, some of the medications make you severely sick. Some are very toxic to you, like lithium. They're constantly doing blood tests to make sure that your toxicity level isn't that high because it's bad for you.
So you're currently still on medication today?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
a journey and within itself. Because when I think about it, I know some people that have been on medication, and just the process of trying to figure out which medication works for them.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a blessing and a curse within the same thing, because it takes sometimes months, because you have to go a couple of weeks to see if it's working before they either decrease the dosage or increase it or change it. They can't just say, oh, if you call the doctor that night and say, oh, the medicine I just got it's not working, unless you have like this crazy outburst in terms of like your body or, it's severe, they're going to tell you to stay on that medication. until you
That's true.
finish the trial or the duration of it. Then they have you come back. So just imagine just going through those changes and not really getting the right education on your reactions off some of those medications, because everybody reacts differently. So
Yeah, and now that you say that about a reaction, so once you started taking the medication, right? As far as your change in prison, uh, how did that come about?
Uh, Once, when I first started taking the medication, like she said, that they changed the doses. So sometimes I would be sick.
Yeah.
Sometimes the depression would get even worse,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you know, because of that, sometimes I got in fights.
Okay.
So I would end up going to the hole, and then they would take me from the hole, put me in a psych unit, and say, it's like, I'm dealing with this medication issue, and so they would change it, change it. But once I found the right type of medications and start taking those, my outlook in prison actually changed for the better.
Okay.
Because even before that, I was taking groups, NA, because the Board of Prison Terms mandated it for me that I had to take NA,
Right.
because of my previous history.
Right.
And so when I started taking mental health groups, it helped me actually understand triggers, coping mechanisms, the different forms of psychosis that go with some of the mental health.
Yeah.
So it was also, it helped me to be able to deal with other people that were around me, because other people around me were on psych meds.
okay.
Okay.
So the prison, when you went to prison at that age and time, it seemed like this was a new journey for you, just in general, being able to be aware of what your diagnosis was, being able to receive the proper support, being able to know how to navigate it and deal with it and communicate for yourself and advocate for yourself, and then being able to be on the front line with other people who were also suffering from mental illness and being able to engage in that. So the whole thing sounded like it was a process every step along the way.
Oh yeah.
Would you say you were thankful for the being able to get help, even though it didn't come off the best at the beginning?
No, I'm definitely grateful for the help, because my outlook on life now compared to the way it was when I was younger
Right,
is night and day. It's total opposites.
right,
Um, Today I want to be able to help individuals, give back to the community, help those that I see struggling, and share my experience with them, so they don't go to prison. I did 27 years, so if I can get one kid to change his life, or at least not go to prison, he doesn't have to be an angel, but at least don't go to prison, I'll be happy.
Well, thank you for sharing. And speaking of the community, there is a question I would like to ask in terms of the community. So, how did your mental illness impact your reentry from prison to the community? Because I think in prison there's structure,
Yeah.
and then when you come out to the community, you kind of like doing everything on your own. So, can you tell us a little bit about that process?
It was overwhelming. Everything had changed. They don't give you the skills needed for a decent reentry into society. You would think that they would give you the skills needed, but if you're a lifer, they don't put you in the groups, in the classes, before you're getting out. That goes to individuals that only doing a couple of years. They put them ahead of you. So when I got out, it was trying to navigate the bus system, going around a city that I've never been. Dealing with trying to get a credit card, getting a bank account, getting your ID and your driver's license. It was all overwhelming.
Technology.
And it's, but luckily I had support from friends that helped guide me, and they went out of their way to say, this is how you do this. This is what you do here.
Okay.
But if I didn't have that support, it would have been a lot rougher than it was. And don't get me wrong, even with the support, it was still rough because you're so used to a structured facility and a certain mindset that when you're in a mall and people are bumping into you or they're mad dogging you, and your old instinct wants to come out.
Right, which is fight or flight.
Yeah. That's pretty deep.
And how was it with employment? Were you able to get employment fast enough, or get support with that, or that took a while?
That took a while. One, because I kept thinking that I could just go up to a business with a resume and hand in a resume like I did back in the 80s before I went to prison. And they're like, no, do it online. And I'm like, what? They don't tell you that in prison. I'm printing up, resumes and have a stack of them. And they're looking at me like I'm an idiot. When you go to hand it to them, like, no, we do everything online now.
And you come dressed up, so you disappointed.
Ready to go.
Ready to go. That is the old lifestyle. Because back in the day, even though you guys are older than me, it was like that. You would go up to the place with your resume, and then the manager would call you, and those type. Then you fill out the application later. So that's definitely a shift. All right. So I think my dad has the next question.
Yeah. So we're gonna move along, Wallace, and we're gonna talk about your coping skills, right?
Okay.
So we're gonna ask you, what are some of your coping skills that help you with navigating in your everyday life?
Definitely taking medication as prescribed every day. You don't miss a day because you don't want to take it or you're busy. No, you take it. The other is exercise is good. It helps with depression. It helps with anxiety, stress. But as in mental coping skills, I learned critical thinking and rational thinking. So I can actually look at the situations around me and say, okay, the reason I'm feeling this way is because of these situations. Don't allow this situation to affect you. And one thing that one thing that I learned that is very hard is to not take things personally.
There you go. Say that again.
Do not take things personally.
Do not take things personal. We learned that in the 44 agreements.
Because, and it took me a very long time to get to that point where I don't take things personally anymore. But, for many, many years, I took everything personally.
Because you take things personal, that starts to shape a negative attitude. Every time something you see that you don't like, it's going to trigger you, and you're going to respond to it wrong. And that energy doesn't feel good at all.
And they say that in life, it's okay to take it personal, but like you said, don't let it disempower you and take over the actual event. Separate the situation from you and what's happening. And I think that is I like that idea of critical and rational thinking. Thank you for that.
Because it gives you opportunity to process it. Instead of bringing it here, he has it out here, and he's evaluating it, and allows him to make a good decision afterwards. Because once you bring it here, it is personal. It's stuck up in here. You can't move. But once it's out here, you see what you're working with. You see what you're working with. So I look at it. I kind of use my hands like that because just to show a visual how what it really is. Because once you hear, it's tight. It's intense. You know what I'm saying?
And I have a question, because I know we always ask about the healthy coping skills. What can you name at least one or two that were unhealthy before you started having healthy coping skills? Like, what were some like two unhealthy things you were doing?
Well, one, drug and alcohol.
Okay, substance abuse.
A lot of individuals, instead of dealing with their problems, they allow their problems to deal with them. And so they use drugs, they use alcohol, and they may or may not be taking their medication. When you're taking medication, you can't mix alcohol and drugs because it alters the chemistry of the medication, and it can have some very bad side effects.
And you see it, we see it firsthand.
Oh, I see it firsthand
when they
every day.
When they do mix the substance
just our line of work. Our line of work, we deal with that. Where guys, they take medication, but then they go off and drink or do drugs, and it doesn't work. It doesn't coexist together.
It doesn't coexist
It doesn't
at all.
coexist together at all.
Yeah.
But you got to understand that, you know, even though people have mental health problems, they still have addictions too. So that's the tough part of it.
And the other unhealthy coping skill or unhealthy behavior would be using violence, projecting your anger and your depression and despair onto somebody else, and then taking it out on them.
As a defense mechanism.
Yes.
So whatever you feeling and how you feel about yourself and what you have going on, you projecting that energy to other people, and it's being seen. Thank you for sharing that, because I just noticed that we always ask, what are some of the coping strategies that you use? And I noticed in one of our Zoom meetings, we had Kijane who said, well, I'm going to talk about the unhealthy first. Ali too said the same thing in our interview. I'm going to talk about the unhealthy first, because I think we do start off with unhealthy behaviors. And then that's when we notice that it's not healthy. Later on, after you get educated about it, then it goes into the positive. All right. So last question. What are some things you can say to help encourage people who are dealing with mental illness and their emotional trauma?
Well, the main thing I would say is whatever you went through in life, it does not define who you are.
That's right.
All right. Can you say that one more time, please? Please, Wallace.
Whatever you went through does not define you. It doesn't matter what it was, what kind of trauma, what kind of abuse. It does not define you as an individual. It is an experience you went through, unfortunately. You can use that to empower yourself to be able to move forward and help others and help yourself, but don't allow it to ruin your life, to destroy you. I would say seek professional help, medication if they prescribe it. Exercise is always good because it really helps with the body and the mind. And both of those are intimately connected. One affects the other. And make sure you have a support group, even if it's just one close friend, somebody that, you know, it could be a family member, it could be a friend. Have that person, let them know everything that you're going through, so that they will know when to step in and really help you. You know, because a lot of times we're ashamed. We don't want to talk to anybody about it, and it festers. And then as it festers, it seeps into other areas of our life, our personality, our relationships. And until that's dealt with, it's always going to be there.
And that's really deep, Wallace, because you got to keep a good support group around you. And that's what this platform is about talking about it, and letting people know that it's okay to talk about it, it's healthy to talk about it, and also to see that it's other people who've been through things just like you, and they have changed their life, they have created a balance with their mental health and with their everyday living life. So Wallace is a good example of that, and just by him coming here today to share these things with you, we're trying to reach everybody out there. And that's really what it's about. You know, this thing is tough to deal with, but we're dealing with it every day, and we just want to be a way just for everybody to be able to live free up here, you know, eventually. So That's something that I appreciate that, Wallace. You know, the world appreciates you. Dynasty appreciates you. You know, so that's a good thing.
And I think too, just to conceptualize the name of our company, Mental Health in the Hood. Some people think that it's only for Black people.
Right.
We say mental health in the hood, and it's like, no, we're basically saying mental health in the neighborhood, and there's no color on what we define for mental health.
Exactly.
Rather, if you Black, white, Asian, every organization, every person, rather if you've been diagnosed with a mental illness or not, has dealt with mental health at some period in their life.
Exactly.
And probably more than once, because we live and we grow, you know, and we are finding ourselves. So I think just letting people know that this is like the new norm, is that we're not the only people talking about mental health, but we want to be the people that are setting the tone of making it more comfortable for people to do. So thank you for coming on the show today, Wallace. And I really feel like it was a good interview. We was able to get some more in-depth information about like the transformation from your childhood to adulthood, and then the support systems you had in between and what that looked like. So thank you for being vulnerable and brave and sharing your story, because it's not easy. People think it look easy to come up here and tell your story, and it's not, okay? And one thing I noticed, you know how we do the shout outs and celebrations? I forgot to shout out everybody for the call to action workout that happened on August 23rd, our first call to action. You know, so let me explain. The call to action is basically trying to find more positive ways that we can deal with the things that we see in our community. We have a lot of emotions that are happening in terms of the police brutality, the amount of deaths that are happening, the systemic racism, and what do you do with those emotions, right? It's on Instagram all day, it's on the news all day, and nobody educates us on what to do with these emotions. So what we did with Mental Health in the Hood and our platform is that we are allowing people to come together for a group workout, get out some of that aggression, get out some of those emotions, but also promote more positivity towards the social injustices that are happening in our community and the lack of equity. So that is what call to action is all about. So we will be having another one on September 9th, because this one was August 23rd. So we have another one on September 9th, and you guys can come by and check it out. All right, so we have some final announcements. All right, we have our next Zoom meetup. That's going to be Wednesday, September 9th at 7 p.m. Tell a friend, bring a friend. It's at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, just for some of our people who live on the East Coast. And with that being said, we always give out the Zoom access code on our flyer on our social media. So you have to go to Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Mental Health in the Hood in order to have access to this meeting. And please bring someone. We really would appreciate it. Season 2, episode 4 will be posted Sunday, September 13th at 9 o'clock a.m. And then we, like I stated before, we have our call to action workout September 20th. I said September 9th. September 20th at 9 o'clock a.m. So if you didn't get a chance to go to the one on August 23rd, and you're able to now be able to come to the one on September 20th at 9 o'clock. So just make sure that if you want to attend, follow the instructions that's on the social media accounts. Thank you guys for following us, joining us, supporting us, subscribing to our show. We appreciate you guys. We cannot do this work without you guys. If you're new to the show, welcome. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers by December. So please tap in and be able to support us that way. I want to thank you guys for the time and the space to have this conversation. And we'll be able to tap in with you guys later.
Thank you, everyday people.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.